Today on the Disruptive Voices of the Pacific, we are having a conversation, a really good conversation, important conversation around the difference between lust and love. And I have no stranger to us. He's been on this podcast many times. Ritchie. Hello, Ritchie.
Hello, Letitia. How are you?
Yeah, good. I'm good. I'm in Australia and you're in Fiji at the moment. You're a pastor, as we know. You like to call yourself a lead servant, which is, I was actually thinking it's funny that you've actually even got to state that because the word pastor should mean that
Yeah.
you're a servant, but unfortunately, so often we've made pastor person to be
Yeah,
served, haven't
that's right.
we?
That's
But
right.
I love it when we come to your church. You serve your people and you serve your community so well. So the reason why we're talking about this is because I had a mother last week message me and ask if we have a podcast on this topic. And also you have been on our girls' camps that we've run at ACS and BMS and even at your church where we do a panel with some of you amazing young men. And it seems to be a common question that the girls ask as well. What is the difference between love and lust? Because generally, when a 14-year-old boy tells a girl he loves her,
Yeah,
he has no understanding
that's right.
of, of what love is. So we want to unpack that. And what I love and why I've chosen you for this topic is because you have lived and you've been open about your lustful years as a young man, but now you're seeking to live as a man walking in love. So take us back again for those who haven't heard your story or are new to this podcast. Form 5 and Suva grammar,
Yeah.
living a life of lust. What was fueling the lust back then?
Well, as a lot of people may have heard my stories, and like growing up, I was addicted to pornography, and it was the influence that I've had from the boys that I was normally hanging out with during the weekends, and because growing up in our home, I was the only boy. Well, my dad was there. But I had two of my sisters that stayed with us, and then I also had three of my cousin sisters that came and stayed with us. So altogether, there was about five girls, and then including my mom, that was six. And the only way that, and my dad he was a great man. Like I've never seen him beat my mom. Um, but because of the busyness of the ministries and the early stages of the ministries, he was so much involved in a lot of things. And the only people that I could hang out with was the boys in the Yasa Yasa. And from there, that was the influence that I started to have. Got hooked up into pornography around year 8, and then getting into high school at grammar, and that really didn't help much because the conversations that we would have were normally around girls, and if I wasn't hooking up with anyone, I wasn't manly enough. Or if I was true to one, then I wasn't, the view that they had of what a man was like then. So for me, like at the early stages, it was just being hooked up onto pornography. Um, about building up towards Easter. And Letitia, you've always asked me what was my passion and why was I passionate about this? And I would normally share half of it because half of my story, I never really shared it. At my early stages, because I was born in August, it was late August. So when the ministry started, I had to find a place to go off to school. And I was put in Sawan Ephesian school because of my auntie. And when I was in Sawan Ephesian school, um, my auntie and them, they were awesome. But there was one person that came in when I was just knocked out in one of my auntie's, one of my cousin's rooms, and he actually molested me there. And I've never shared this. It was until um, building up towards Easter, we were talking about the amazing story in church, and the only people that knew about my personal story was my mom and my sisters and my wife. And it was in church when I told them about my story, about what really happened to me, and the fact that when I started to get hooked onto pornography because I was trying to suppress all the things that was happening inside of me and my thoughts and all those other things that was happening. And that's when people started to say to me, oh, no wonder now we get to really understand the full picture of why you are and why you're so passionate. And I said to them, I felt like it wasn't the right time up until that moment when we were on this amazing story series in church.
Mm,
But it's because a lot of things that has happened. And I said to the people in church, and I even tell people it's not my parents' fault.
mm,
It's no one's fault,
yeah,
you know. But right now, the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing is because I want to really be vocal about all these issues. If we're quiet about it, then it's going to affect a lot more young people and other people that are going through the same thing. The amazing thing is after I shared my story on Sunday in church to the church members, I had people coming up to me and says, I've gone through the same thing. I just didn't know how I was going to share it.
yeah,
And now I've got more of my church members coming up to me and telling me about their story and their experiences. And they said to me, we've never had, we've been here for such a while. We didn't know that our pastor was going through the same thing. They had been through the same thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
And thank you for sharing that, Richie. And I love how God just does, you've shared a lot of your story, but how God just reveals the right time when new things need to come out. And he knows who needs to hear it. And quite often I say to Fijian pastors, if you're all just honest to your congregation, because no pastor's perfect.
Yeah.
We have our struggles, we have our
Yeah.
past, but man, that would set our people free. And by you
Yes.
sharing your story is giving them
Mm.
permission to
Yeah.
speak up. So thank you. And yeah, so I mean, at the moment, I would say we have a whole generation of young men, even young girls, who are growing up and they're driven by lust. Now,
Yeah.
at our recent BMS camp, we run Bella camps. Bella means beautiful girl, and we do a 1 day camp, and we did one at BMS in March. And the girls, yeah, they ask, what is the difference between love and lust? And I think you answered it so well by saying love is really described in 1 Corinthians 13.
Yeah.
And we quote it all the time.
That's right.
Love is patient, love is kind, it is not selfish, it does not demand its own way.
Yeah.
Um, and so the opposite of that is lust, because lust
Yeah.
is not patient.
Yeah. That's right.
Have young guys just wanting to, why rape
Mm.
is so high. Love does not care about, it's not kind. Lust is not
Yeah.
kind.
Yeah.
It's selfish. It does not think of the other person as more important than themselves.
Mm.
So when you are living in this era of lust, yes, which had come out of your own molestation, that is another driving force of lust, which then drives you
Yeah.
to pornography.
Yeah.
Pornography is always the fruit of deeper issues.
Yeah.
So what were your actions like?
Well, it was totally the opposite from what love is. You know, because of pornography and because of the things that you watch, because of the things that you see, and back then it was VCDs going around. And then we had like right now you've got everything on your mobile phone, it's easy accessible. But back then it was magazines that we would be passing it around and like we would watch it, and the only times I could be able to watch those kind of movies is like when no one's around or when everyone's asleep, so it was trying to find a specific time to be alone to be able to watch those kind of things. And but I'd imagine right now that there's a young man that's really, really struggling, or even a young woman that's really struggling because you've got your mobile phones and you can put your headphones on and no one will be able to know what you're watching, you know? So the impact of watching pornography now on people's actions, like for me, it changed the way I would view women. It changed the way that I would start seeing them, and all of a sudden the desire just to be sexual aroused, like it started to come up so quickly. And just the desire to be sexually satisfied, and next minute it's just viewing women as just means to try and satisfy those urges. And if it wasn't met, and all of a sudden the words that was used, you know that, oh, I love you was oftenly used a lot, just so that it could, uh, and and one of the things I've noticed is women just want to be loved. And the more that you tell them, and they think, oh yeah, this is true love, which it was coming from a different perspective from the other side, like from me.
Mm.
And love was just easily used and just to get what I needed. And I tell you, it was just been the actions wasn't right, the words wasn't right because it was coming from a lustful place and not a place for real where there's real love that's really coming up from. And that was one of the things. Like my actions was just it wasn't really to help the other person. It was more from my own desires, and that was it.
Purely selfish. That's
Yeah,
what lust is.
self-centered.
Very, very self-centered. And it's confusing for the girls, as you said.
Yeah,
So, well, girls just want to be loved. So
yeah,
they're hearing these words, I love you, but then these actions are kind of not fully
mm,
where they want to go, or it's not making them
yeah,
feel good. And so,
yeah,
again, this is why we've done this. The
mm,
way you know if someone loves you is
yeah.
that they're kind, they're
That's
patient,
right. Yeah,
they serve you.
mm,
They're willing to wait until you've
that's right.
graduated from high school. Quite often, I tell a girl if he says he loves you, you tell him that you'll date him once you've graduated,
That's
um,
right.
and then you'll know because he's either off onto the next girl, and then you know straight away, or if he does wait, he does. But so
Yeah.
it's and that's when a this and that again, it's another common question the girls ask at camp. What does it mean when Johnny says I love you?
Mm.
So can you tell us what's going through Johnny's head at that point?
Well, like I said, I'm speaking from my own perspective and my own experiences because of watching pornography and because at that moment I've just been sexually aroused, and I've all I wanted to do was just to be satisfied sexually. And the only thing I'm trying to do is, hey, I love you. Come on, would you send me a picture? Hey, I love you. Would you be able to meet up with me, knowing very well that even though she's busy or other things, and be like using words just to make the other person feel bad.
Mm,
And you'll be like, oh, you don't love me back? Come on, I'm making time for you. That
mm,
doesn't that mean I love you?
mm.
And it's just trying to really force them to do things that they don't want to do,
Yeah.
and or send me a picture of you. Come on, I want to see a face. I want to see more. I love you so much. Would you show me more? And
Mm,
it's just a lot of the times using the word love to make the other person feel miserable.
mm,
And that's not love.
mm.
When a person's forcing you and saying that they love you, but they're forcing you to do what you want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's driven by lust.
Yeah.
The greatest love in the world comes from, as we know, Jesus, who
Yeah.
no greater love has a man have than he
That's right.
lays down his life.
Yeah.
So that's our example.
Mm.
And again, I say it to girls, and I've heard you when you came and spoke at ACS the other week. Girls don't, it's not what he says, it's what he does. We've got to look
Yeah.
at the actions,
That's right.
whether they respect you, whether they
Mm.
protect you,
Yeah.
they've got your interests in hand. Now, the good news is this is not the man who you are today. You've been married
Yeah.
for 8 years to beautiful mother.
Mm.
And I heard a bit more of your story a few weeks ago that when you first met her, you then waited 2.5 years
Yeah.
to ask her out to
Yeah.
date her. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's wild to wait two and a half years. Why did you wait so long?
Well, I've always seen my wife at their church conferences and things. And when we got friends on Facebook, one of the things I would think to myself is I've always asked people out on Facebook, but if this is the girl and if this is the person that I want to be with, I want to make sure I'm not doing the same thing that I'm doing to everyone else. And I just wanted to make sure that I approached her differently. And I made sure that if I had to ask her out, it wouldn't be on Facebook. It would have to be asking her out face to face. And so at the same time, I was so worried because even me growing up, I knew who I was. And I knew that there was a lot of things I had to deal with. And if I didn't deal with those things,
Mm.
then I was just setting up something to fail. And it's because I've also had people that would be by my side and they would normally tell me, Richie, if you have to marry, you've got to marry well. So for me, it was really making sure that not that she was the perfect one for me, but making sure that I was the perfect person for her. And that was why I just really, I had to wait. I had to make sure, I had to try and really think about the timing, whether it was the right time or whether it wasn't. And making sure that whatever I do, that I wasn't gonna hurt her. Like I grew up, like I said, I grew up, I've never seen my dad lift a hand on my mom. And, but at the same time, I had to make sure that even though I wasn't gonna hurt her physically, I also wanted to make sure that I wasn't gonna hurt her with my words, or hurt her with my actions or whatever I was gonna do. But I was still an imperfect person, and still learning a lot. But I'm thankful to God for taking me through that process, just being able to wait and being able to take things slowly. And but every now and again, I'd be asking her questions like, "Oh, because she wasn't from the same church as I was, and we were from different denominations." I would ask her questions like, "What's your kind of guy?" You know, and making sure that if she had to, when she described that kind of guy, I would normally say, "Oh, am I that person right now for her?" Like,
Yeah.
it was trying to listen to what was the kind of person that she wanted, and not forcing me in, but just really trying to hear what was the kind of person that she had wanted. Because I had also understood that she had also been through her. She also heard her story. She also had been hurt from other boys, and I wanted to make sure that I was that person that would be able to come in and bring healing along along that journey, and also be able to um not mess things up with her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. Were you afraid that she might date another guy in those 2 years?
I was afraid, because she was from a different denomination.
Mhm.
There was a lot of guys in that church, and I'm just like, Lord, I hope no one takes her away this quickly. But I was just by that's why I would normally ask her questions like, what was your kind of guy? What would be the kind of guys that your mom and your dad would say yes to?
Yeah.
So I was just trying to hear all those kind of things to make sure that when I approach her or approach her parents, that they would say yes to me.
And did they?
Oh, yes, they did.
They did, obviously, because you're married now. And that's again, love, I'm just looking at First Corinthians here, love does
Yeah,
not demand its own way. Um, it's not irritable. What you did was for 2.5 years, you worked on yourself,
yeah.
you honored her, you were patient, you allowed God to do a work in your life, and that's love. So, what is today, 8 years married? Because I guess the other thing with the difference between love and lust, love is
Yeah,
a commitment, lust is a feeling.
yeah, that's
But
right.
you don't always feel, do you wake up every day feeling in love towards Martha?
Um, it's it's some you get some of those days where you get up and things are not going well, you
Exactly.
know. If love was a feeling, then it would disappear all of a sudden. But because love is not a feeling,
Mm.
you get up in the morning and no matter how their hair is like, or even without makeup, you look at them and you still fall in love with them, and that's why it's you say a vow when you get married in sickness and in health, in good times and in bad times, and that's what love is. It holds you forever. We've always looked at First Corinthians according to the Message version, and we just love that so much because it says love never gives up. Love cares more for others than for self. Like the way that the Message version describe what that particular scripture is just amazing because it just makes it so personal.
Yeah.
And love's always about getting to know the person even much more,
Mm.
and I watched this movie once and I think I've forgotten the name, But the guy said love is like going to school. You know, it's
Yeah.
when you find that person, it never stops. You just keep learning more and more about them. You know, and even when you graduate from primary school, you've got to go to secondary school, and it's a lifetime of getting to know someone. And
Mm.
it's always about being interested about who they are and what they like. Because every now and again, the person changes. You know, and every now and again, I've always tried to tell my wife, look, would you be able to tell me what you're feeling or what you're going through? And sometimes my wife gets so grumpy and she's upset at a few things, and I'd come up to her and I says, "What did I do? Was it me?" You know, and I didn't like the way you looked at me the other day, or things like that. And that's what love is. It's about trying to really communicate well with the person, and trying to get them to share and openly things, and be able to accept them for who they are. And a lot of the times, like I've my wife would just tell me, don't force me, don't force me. And I'm like, okay, I'm sorry,
Mm.
because we're both different. Well, you've met Martha, I'm a I'm an extrovert. I'm out there. I'm always doing things, but she has her space. She needs her space, and but I'm just grateful to God on this journey, and that's what love is. It's about accepting the person for who they are, but at
Mm.
the same time being a person that will be able to allow them to grow, giving them that space. And there will be mornings where you get up, and even though they may not look the same way as they were, we're actually this year will be 10 years of our marriage.
Wow.
Yeah,
And
10 years of our marriage. And I'm so thankful to God because I've got a person that would normally call me every now and again. And the first question they would ask me is, have you taken your wife out on a date?
mm,
Or have you taken her out for coffee? And I'm grateful that I've got people that are always that's there by my side that will always ask me questions like that.
yeah.
Not about the ministry or not about anything else. Because one of the things that I've learned is the effectiveness of my wife and I, our relationship, will be the effectiveness of how we lead our people.
Yeah.
And it's not because she has to be behind me every now and again. She has to be beside me along the journey, you know. And some people have always said, behind every successful man. These 10 years have taught me it's not behind every successful man, it's beside. Because how successful I am also will show on how successful she is.
Mm.
And because we're both one in this journey.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yes, and if we could all get a hold of that, it would change the nation. Obviously, this past week or so, we've had the devastating news in Fiji of
Mm.
3 women being murdered at the hands of
Right.
men. What is it? What is going on in the men's lives, do you think, that is causing them to kill their loved ones?
I like personally, I feel that sometimes people marry for the wrong reasons.
Mm.
They marry for the wrong reasons, and that's why they will always do things for the wrong reasons. And if you marry for the wrong reasons, then there will always be a clash, and there will always be things happening. And a lot of the times we think that if we could settle things, um, and maybe settle it through the traditional ways or other means, or even if we want to try and be religious about setting things out, but if we don't really talk about the real issues and the real reasons why things are happening, then it's just going to burst out into things that we've seen over the weekend.
Mm.
Um, we've I feel like in Fiji we don't really have a lot of marriage counselings, and I think we should have that. Where
Mm.
we have places where people can go off to and share what they're going through and openly talk about what's really happening. And if we're able to help that, and even if the church is able to open up avenues for people to come in and access those things, uh,
Mm.
I think we would be able to start seeing a lot of this. Um, we wouldn't be able to see what's happening right now.
Yeah.
And I think we've just got to be real and be able to, and also maybe have places where people could talk about their issues openly. Um, as men, we don't really openly talk about what's happening inside us. And so we've always bottled up frustrations and anger. And I think because we've bottled it up, It's just like a bottle of Coke when you shake it. When the more that you shake it, it'll just burst out. And I think that's what happened over the weekend. And we've just seen outbursts. And if we're not able to talk about it, and if we're not able to provide services, marriage counseling services and things like that, I think we're gonna have to expect more of those outcomes in the weeks ahead of us. Mm.
Yes, unfortunately, Fiji is in a lot of pain and trauma, and
Yeah.
many people need healing. But
Yep.
thank you for just being honest about your story because that will help a whole lot of other men come
Yep.
forward. Because if we don't find
Mhm.
places to be open and broken, as you say, we don't get healing, and it usually comes out on our loved ones.
Yeah, that's
Well,
right.
thank you, Richie. Our time is up, but I think that's been a really helpful description, the difference between love and lust.
Yep.
Love, just look at 1 Corinthians 13. Lust is the
Right.
total opposite of selfishness, impatience,
Yep.
narcissistic. So let's help our young people, let's help our boys and our girls understand the difference and be able to walk in love
Yep.
both. So I understand you've got a camp coming up for young guys as
Yep.
well in the
Yep.
holidays. So hopefully we can get some information out there too, because I think there'd be some parents wanting to send their sons along. But thank you, Richie, for all that you do and keep going.
Thank you so much. All the best with the training.
Thank you.